It's such an aha moment, and it's such a great feeling too when people do choose you, because you're like, wow, like they trust me and they like something that I'm doing.
Welcome to Duo On Air, where we help you get seen, remembered, and wildly obsessed over by your audience. We're your hosts, Abby
and Courtney, a pair of ex-agency besties who ditched the cubicles, the Minneapolis skyways, and the corporate jargon for work that matters, with people who inspire us every day. Today, we're a women-powered marketing agency serving brands worldwide, bringing those big agency results without the corporate price tag.
Around here, it's all about what actually grows your business: branding, SEO, websites, and navigating the real-life ups and downs of building a dream while raising tiny humans. We're moms, wives, and best friend business partners in the trenches with you, making the hard stuff feel easy and a whole lot more fun.
So pour a fresh cup, get comfy, because you're exactly where you need to be.
Let's duo this.
Welcome back to the Duo On Air podcast. This is episode number 222, and today I'm sitting down with someone we have had the pleasure of working with, Shannon Leyko. Shannon is the host of the Top 1% podcast, Paring Down, an author and an intentional living expert who has built an incredible personal brand from the ground up. We are talking all about what it actually takes to build a personal brand, the strategy, the mindset, and the stuff that nobody really warns you about. You are going to absolutely love this one, I promise, because Shannon is a gem. So let's dive into it. Hi, Shannon, and thank you for being on the Duo On Air podcast. We're so excited to have you today.
Well, hey, Courtney, I'm happy to be here. This is so fun.
Yes, I feel like we talk to each other like every other day. And
I know,
kind
on
of
email.
love it.
I'm going to say my bad because I'm like always emailing you with a question. So you're the best.
It's great. I love it. I absolutely love it. To all of our listeners, Shannon is a client of ours. We worked on her branding, her website, her SEO, and we're continuing to work on some other things with her, which has been so exciting. So we've been working with Shannon for, oh my gosh, I don't even know when we kicked this off. Maybe close to a year,
Something like
something like that. So I don't even know how you came into our universe, but I have to say, when I saw your inquiry and got to know a little bit more about you, I was so jazzed that we were going to work on your brand together. Also, you were like a godsend, I think, probably to the whole team about like what it is that you do and what you teach people, because I think everybody could learn a lot from you. So with that, I want you to introduce yourself, tell our audience a little bit about what you do, who you are, and then we'll dive in and talk a little bit about building a personal brand.
Sure. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Shannon. And Courtney, I cannot believe I never told you this. I found you because of your podcast. I literally, in the podcast app on Apple, searched SEO podcast, SEO information, something like that, proves that you're good at your job, because I wanted someone who, if I put that in, their SEO would bump them to the top.
Yes.
Because clearly that means you know what you're
Perfect.
talking about. And so I listened to a bunch of episodes when I was thinking about trying to optimize my website through SEO myself, before I realized I do not have the time or expertise to do that. And because you guys gave such wonderful free information on your podcast, and I got to know your personalities, that's what made me trust you, and why I reached out to have you guys do my whole website and brand and all of the things. So I wanted to make sure you knew that this podcast is exactly why I found you. But for everyone else, I am a decluttering educator. I don't call myself an expert, because I started the Paring Down podcast because I needed to declutter my house. Like many of us do, we wake up in our 30s and you're like, why do I have so much stuff? And so as I was sharing that on my private Instagram account, I had so much feedback from my friends being like, oh, I want to do this too, that I was like, well, I'm going to start a podcast about my experience. And over time, of course, I've learned a lot. And so I do come at it as an educator now, but I'm definitely in the trenches with everyone on the Paring Down podcast. And I started an Instagram from scratch, a public one for that. And that went viral about 9 months after starting that, which made the podcast take off. And so that turned into my full-time job. And I love every second of it, because I really believe in the message that not only decluttering is important to decrease our stress inside of our house, but it's also a catalyst for intentional living in every area of our lives. What is worth keeping? What do we want to fill our lives with? What do we want to get rid of so it doesn't distract us from the important things? So the messaging goes really, really deep. So that's what I do for my job. I have a book coming out with Penguin Random House next year, which is a dream come true. And then on top of that, I am a mom of 3. They are 5, 6, and 8 years old. So, they're young and wild. And we live in Kodiak, Alaska currently. My husband's in the Coast Guard, so we move a lot. And this summer we are moving to Finland. So that's my personal life, and it's a very fun one.
You have an amazing story. I absolutely love it. And so that's what goes back to me saying she was like a godsend to our whole team, I feel like, because we're all in that lifestyle phase too, where we're like, we wake up and we're like, wow, we have a lot of crap and it's stressful and, it's hidden in closets or it's here or it's there. And so Shannon, thank you. And to our audience, she does an amazing job at talking you through how to declutter your life. It's not overwhelming. It's very authentic. It's very personable. It's very, it can be big or it can be bite-sized. It's all kind of dependent on where you're coming from and how much you want to declutter. So when Shannon came to us and when we first met her, I was like, oh, not only am I going to work on her brand and help her, but she's going to help me. Like, we're going to help each other here. So I have started my decluttering journey, and it's just so fun to follow you and learn from you and live a less stressful life by not having so much crap, essentially.
Well, thanks. I'm glad it's helpful.
Yes, it's very helpful. Okay, so your background is so varied. You have a psychology degree. You are a professional vocalist, Miss New York, crazy, author, a top 1% podcast host. How did all of those different chapters actually shape the personal brand that you have today?
I think there's a common thread throughout all of them, which is this communication piece, right? And I love psychology. My minor was in communications, and the psychology has allowed me through all the things I do, the background in psychology, to just be interested in people and how our brains work and interested in my own brain and my own perspectives and all of that. And I think that helps, obviously, as I've become someone who interviews people. I think coming at it from that perspective is important and interesting. When I did Miss New York, I was a full-time speaker. So I traveled the state speaking at fundraisers or school assemblies or whatever keynote people needed. And so obviously that helped with my speaking skills. And I was always comfortable being in front of people because, like you mentioned, I was a professional vocalist. I worked at Busch Gardens theme park in Williamsburg, Virginia. Yeah, it was so fun. And I grew up doing musical theater. That's why I had lived in New York, was to pursue Broadway. And that's where I became Miss New York, obviously. And so being in front of people has always been very comfortable for me. And podcasting is just another way of doing that. It's a little different, obviously, on a screen instead of a stage, but they go hand in hand. And I also worked in unscripted television for a couple of years as a producer on the development side. So for reality TV, essentially, we were finding brand new talent for people or for networks that might want to pick up a show about them. So not casting for shows on air, but brand new ideas. And my job was to find the talent and then interview them and create these miniature sizzle reels that we would internally vote on, or the CEO and the director of the department, before then, if we wanted to bring it to networks up in New York in our New York office. And so anyway, that obviously prepared me to interview people. And so all of this has come together. And I think in terms of the personal brand, it's just a lot of energy, which you guys have captured really well. But yeah, I'm not like a very subdued person, in case you can't tell by the way that I talk, And I think that, but it's been fun. It's been fun to see all these different forms of communication and interests come together to what I do today. I love it. I've always been a communicator and a writer, and here I am podcasting and writing a book. So it's fun.
I feel like, your past has really set you up for success to be a personal brand and to really like step into it and have that confidence, because I feel like a lot of people probably lack that confidence in building a personal brand, because not only is it personal, but it's also a brand. So it's a little bit of both, right? Like you're mixing like, how you built this brand, why you built this brand, but then you also have to kind of build a business, build a brand. And I think a lot of people kind of get hung up on like how much personal, how much professional. And I think just being confident in talking and speaking and interviewing people is such a good quality to have when building a personal brand, which can be hard too, especially in today's day and age of, you feel like you have to show up everywhere online. So I think your background and where you've come from probably for years was setting you up to have such a strong personal brand.
Absolutely. And it's still awkward sometimes. Like, I'm not going to pretend like it's not weird. I was just saying to my neighbor last night that, when I tell people what I do for work, it is work. And yet it's awkward because you're like, and it's all about me. It's not all about me, but my job is very much face forward, right? And so you need a website and it is your face and a photo shoot of your face and your social media is you. And it can start to feel like, am I a narcissist? But this is also my job, and it is something I really love. And the message is important to me. But to be the face of a brand is a little bit weird. And I do think it's important to have those boundaries about what that means personally versus professionally. Something I'm really grateful I did when I started paring down was like, this is not my personal account. I made a separate account. And while it is now my name, originally it was my handle was Paring Down, but now it is Shannon Leyko. But this is my professional page. I have a private page where I share my children. I don't personally share my children on my public page. And I'm grateful I made that separation. And I also decided ahead of time kind of what my boundaries are, not only about my kids, but how much I share of my life, because I want to be relatable. I want to share pieces of myself to connect with other people and create community. That is important to me. It's not just business and I'm just trying to make money off people. Like I want to connect with people, but we can all kind of share little pieces of our life in a way that we feel is respectful to the other people in our lives and to our own personal privacy. And I do feel like I've managed that well, but it did come with intention at the very beginning of the process.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I love that you brought that up too, because I think a lot of people also struggle with that. Like we were talking about, like how much do we share? How much do we not share while building a community and still trying to be personable. I've followed you ever since we met you, and I think you do a fabulous job, especially in your stories. So if you guys follow Shannon, which if you don't, you should, your stories do such a great job of like bringing in that personal side, but also respecting your boundaries and like letting your audience know, like, this is how I feel here. This is my boundary here. And I think you do a really good job of juggling all of that, because that's gotta be hard, like on the daily, kind of like you said, but setting those boundaries right away, I think is so personal or so smart for a personal brand and something that you need to do right away. Thanks. So when did you kind of talked about this earlier, like you started doing this kind of just personally. When did you realize that you were actually building a personal brand? It kind of sounded like it was organic, but maybe it was also intentional too. So I'm just kind of curious how that process started, because I feel like a lot of people out there probably are in the same, place as you are, right? They have something to share, or they have knowledge, or they're like quote unquote an educator or whatever it might be. And they might just start it personally. And then, like you said, you had friends that are like, I love this, like you should, and then you're kind of like, wow, maybe more people would love it. So I'd love to hear about like kind of how it all started.
Yeah, I never saw myself as a personal brand. I would say even when I started the podcast and the public Instagram account, it was more like, this is what I want to talk about. It's decluttering, Right. And so I knew I wanted to use social media because I had worked on the social media team for another large creator in the mental health space. And so I had a lot of exposure of what that consistency looked like, showing up with reels and that sort of thing. And so that was my thoughts about it. It was like, I'm just going to talk about decluttering on the internet. And then you learn that a lot of people are talking about decluttering on the internet. And the reason people start to follow you is primarily because of who you are, because a lot of people are saying the same things. And that doesn't mean that we don't need more voices in the space, because different people will resonate with different people. And so I think it's important that there's different people talking about similar things online, because we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to connect with someone that can help them. But I would say I didn't realize just how much of it was a personal brand until I was turning in my book proposal to my agent. And she was like, we were talking through what it would look like on submission when we were bringing it to publishers, and how as an author, that is very much a personal brand. Mm-hmm. And so they're not going to have Paring Down as the author on the front. It's going to be Shannon Leyko, you know? And so that's when I was like, oh, maybe I should change my Instagram handle and just make it my name. And that's really when I started to feel like, oh, this is more of a personal brand than I had first realized. It's not just about decluttering and just about the Paring Down podcast. And that was a little bit scary, but it's also why around the time I reached out to you guys, I think I changed my name on Instagram only a couple months after I first started working with you guys. So you guys were a huge part of that process of building up this website, shannonleyko.com. really leaning into the personal brand, saying, okay, Shannon, I'm going to do a real photo shoot, not just the picture my husband took of me in the kitchen,
Yay!
like really turning it into a personal brand. And I've enjoyed the process. I feel like it's been a good shift, and it's fun. I think it's fun.
Yeah, yeah, that's so exciting. Yeah, it's so fun to see that come to life too when we were working with you. Like, yeah, like we're gonna do this photo shoot and we're gonna give you direction and it's gonna match your brand and your voice and all of that. So it's just so fun to see that come to life too and to watch somebody step into that. And like you said, there's people out there that are doing what you do, but it's you. Like you are the reason that people follow you, because I can go anywhere and learn how to declutter from anybody out there who's educating me about it. But I'm going to go to you because I resonate with you and your personality and the way that you teach and the way that you talk to your audience. And that's such a big thing too when it comes to personal branding, is knowing that just because there are tens of thousands or hundreds or whatever it might be of people that do the same thing that you do, people are going to choose you because of you. And that's such it's such an aha moment, and it's such a great feeling too when people do choose you, because you're like, wow, like they trust me and they like something that I'm doing as a human, and it's just so powerful.
It is. And it's also an important lesson on not trying to be like anybody else, not saying what's working. Oh, what is that, famous influencer doing, or how is she doing things? I very quickly after I started my Instagram and podcast, stopped listening and watching social media reels of people in my niche, because not only did I not want to like accidentally see their stuff and take an idea without realizing I'd taken it. I think there's some of that on social media where you don't even realize that somebody else had done it. You're like, you think it's your own idea and you don't realize that subconsciously you saw the same thing. I just didn't want to be involved with that. But also because I didn't want to start analyzing, oh, what are they doing that's working? And I need to be more like that. No, I'm just going to do my own thing. I'm going to talk about how I love books, and I don't have a super decluttered. I mean, my house is decluttered, but I don't have a super minimalist house. And I think I really leaned into this love I have of psychology and understanding the why behind decluttering and what's stopping us and how do we handle sentimental items, because my mom passed away and I can speak to that. And the more that I kind of drowned out the noise of what other people were doing and just leaned into my own personality, that I don't have the kind of like, I think of a lot of decluttering and kind of like home oriented accounts are these very calm and like restful type of a vibe. And I'm like, that is so not me, but the more I leaned into who I was and what I enjoyed, the psychology of all of it, the more I grew. And so it's important to just do what is true and natural to you, because that it really is the brand that will grow.
Yeah. I think as small business owners too, we get so hung up on that imposter syndrome, or we're following somebody and we want to be like them. So that is such a great takeaway, is to maybe, if you're falling into this imposter syndrome with your personal brand, to stop following other people who are doing the same thing, because then you kind of just get into this loop of like, maybe I should do it that way, or maybe I should look like them, or maybe I should be like them. And that's so not true. When you really lean into who you are and what you can offer your audience, it just becomes that much stronger. And I think the funny thing when you said like other people out there are, very, very minimalist or whatever it might be, you're so relatable because you are a mom, and, we're all busy. We're all running businesses. We're all doing these things, and we've all accumulated clutter. Not a lot of us have these pristine, perfect houses, right? So it's that relatability that is also so important when it comes to building brands, because you want to relate to your audience. You are your audience. You're like, hey, I am the core audience as well, and this is how I'm teaching you how to do it. So I think that's so strong, and just something that a lot of people get hung up on is that imposter syndrome. And it's like, how do you get yourself out of that loop? Totally. So you've talked about authenticity, generosity, consistency being some of the biggest pillars of your success. How do you stay authentic when there's so much pressure to perform on places like Instagram or the algorithm?
Oh, that's a good question. Part of it is just naturally, I don't feel like I can be inauthentic. I just feel too weird and awkward if I'm not like, I can't try and be like somebody else, like it's right. Really not in my nature. And growing up, I used to be annoyed with myself for that because, especially in adolescence, we want to conform and belong. And I used to wish I could better, and I can't. But now in adulthood, it, I think, has benefited me And so thank you to my inner weirdo, you know? But yeah, I think it's just a matter of knowing yourself well as well. I do know myself quite well. And that comes from a lot of work, reading books, reading different perspectives. Also, my own background, I grew up in a really high control religious group that forced you to do a lot of inner work in an unhealthy way. But I won't pretend that there aren't benefits from being very self aware and constantly kind of questioning myself. I've had to learn how to do that in a healthy manner in adulthood. But I think that the more you know yourself, the easier it is to be authentic because it flows out of you when you know what you believe and what you stand for, you can't hide that, and so I think a lot of times when people are maybe putting on a facade or trying to act a certain way on the internet, that comes from a lack of really knowing what they personally believe and stand for. And that doesn't mean that I take a stand for everything I believe on the internet, because one of the things I believe is that we should live in the gray and that there's so much more nuance than the internet really allows for. And so, I have, again, the word boundaries. I have my boundaries around what I will speak on online, but it's more so just the vibe of like, I know who I am. I know what matters to me, that it's people, that it's kindness, that it's love, that it's inclusion. And so those things are going to come out in the way that I speak authentically.
Yeah. Yeah. Has there ever been a point while building a personal brand or being in this or just like growing really fast, which we'll talk about in a second? Has there ever been a point where you feel like authenticity slipped or like you started to kind of like get into this area of like, I need to be more like them, or just any sort of struggles when it comes to authenticity, or even just, you have a large following, people, being offended by something you might say or do. How do you handle something like that when it comes to building a personal brand?
Yeah, there was a point, I would say about 6 months ago, where I started to feel that by not talking about certain things on the internet, I wasn't being true to myself, and I wasn't being authentic. But I also knew that I don't want to cause division. And like I said, I think so many things are nuanced. So I did decide to speak on something that was a little bit more controversial. And that was very difficult. I lost a couple thousand followers, and I had some pretty wild DMs. But really, what that taught me was that I had way more supportive and understanding and nuancy people in my community than maybe I'd even realized. And those people are even more dedicated, for lack of a better word, to me and my brand because I talked about those things. And I know that I'm more aligned now with the people in my audience because they know where I stand and what I think is right and wrong. And I don't think everyone has to do that. But for me, it got to a point where I felt very torn, and it was upsetting me, and it was going to be upsetting to post because I don't like controversy. I have very thin skin. People think that if you have a personal brand, you got to have thick skin. That would be nice, but that doesn't mean we all do. And I don't,
Right.
And so I knew that would be hard, but I was having to choose my hard. Do I choose the hard of being authentic online and knowing that I was going to get pushed back and lose people? Or was I going to choose the hard of feeling like I wasn't living into my values, on my own inside my house every day? I was just feeling really torn. And so I chose the hard of showing up online. And again, I am very particular about when I will do that sort of thing. But yeah, sometimes it is a hard choice, but I don't think it negatively affected my brand at all.
Right. I think sometimes that actually positively affects people's brands because you gain more followers who, believe that or appreciate you even just, talking about where you stand on something, whether it's controversial or not. And then, a lot of people, I think, we look at the numbers and it's a vanity metric, right? Most of the time when we're thinking about Instagram and stuff like that, and people are like, oh, I said something and I offended all these people and now I lost X, amount of followers or whatever. But those might not have been your people to begin with in the first place, right? Maybe they followed you because they saw one single post, but they're not really active. So it's, as small business owners, that's a tough thing to do sometimes. And even with Duo Collective, Abby and I, we're in Minneapolis, and there's been tons of things that are very controversial that have happened in our own backyard. And it is hard to show up smiling and laughing and happy and positive every day when that's not what's happening in our backyard some days. So Abby and I have also, we've felt the pressure of, talking about where we stand on things. And sometimes you just can't, we're marketers. So sometimes we even show up and we're just like, we can't market today. It's too hard. Like there's more important things going on in the world, and we'll talk about them. And if people don't agree with us, then maybe they weren't supposed to be there in the first place. Maybe they weren't true followers or a true audience. So I think there's learning there, and sometimes there's hurt because you lose people. But I think being authentic like that, when you truly feel it in your heart, is also important while you're building that personal brand too. Just because you want your audience to truly understand you and where you feel, even if you ruffle some other people's feathers too. So we got kind of deep and emotional there. Apologies, but
don't apologize. I love it. I love it.
So you went from 0 to 18,000 plus newsletter subscribers and a top 1% podcast in under 2 years, very, very quickly. Kudos to you. But what do most people underestimate about growing an audience around a personal brand? Because it doesn't always happen that quick like that.
Everyone underestimates consistency, even though we all know that's the answer, but then people will be consistent, and being consistent for a month feels like a lot because it is a lot. Yes. But I had to be consistent for 9 months before I had a single reel go viral. And then that reel brought in 180,000 followers from one reel. It was crazy. But that meant I did the calculations one. I think it was like my 300 something reel that I had made, right?
Okay.
So that consistency, and not just consistency, but dedication to continually getting better at what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So I was not only posting 6 reels a week, I was looking around, not in my niche, but on the internet, what is working? How can I get better at this? How can I get better with lighting? How can I make my hooks more interesting? How can I push people to the caption? Because when they read the caption, then they can get pushed to the podcast. And I was very intentional about this for a very long time. And I've never stopped being intentional about it. Yep. I'm now going on, it'll be 3 years in October that I started this account, and I'm constantly having to reevaluate, is what I'm doing working? Do I enjoy how I'm doing this? Because you get bored with a certain style after a while. Yep. And the internet shifts right now. People are much more interested in listening to talking head videos on Instagram than they used to be. It used to be B-roll and that kind of thing. And those reels do tend to still get higher views, even when I post them now. Like if you look at the view count, it tends to be higher. I don't get followers from those reels. I get followers from when I'm talking, because people want humanity. We've all gotten to the point with social media where no one's getting off of it, but we're all kind of disenchanted with it. Right. And so the only thing that is drawing new people in is if they can feel the humanity, and that means you have to talk to the camera. And so that's been a shift in my content. So I would say that people underestimate just how consistent for how long you need to be. They underestimate how much effort and time goes into making sure you're getting better at what you're doing, and that every single piece matters of what you do. So you can't just put out really interesting reels that get a lot of views and new followers and not have it be about the content. You have to know what you want to do. I knew I wanted to push people to the podcast. So if I'm making a reel that's getting a lot of followers and I'm talking about something that has nothing to do with decluttering, that's not helping my brand or helping my account, because really I want to get people to the podcast. That has been my primary goal. And now that has extended to, of course, wanting people to buy my book when it comes out next year. And so everything I post, even if I post something that has nothing to do with decluttering, like today, for example, or last night, I posted something about the book Yesteryear, because there's a lot of dialogue around that. And I ran in the same social circle as Ballerina Farm in my early 20s. And I was like, well, I got to share this, And so, but even still, I pushed people to the caption. It says, if you're interested in more juicy information about how influencers get paid, and I put a little down arrow so people read the caption, and I pushed them to a podcast episode I did about how, with another decluttering influencer, about how we make money. So it still pushes them to the podcast. So I think people underestimate the intentionality that you have to have in order to make sure you're you're, helping people go where you want them to go, not just, like you said, building a vanity metric that's not actually going to help your business.
Yeah. So intentionality and consistency. I
Yep,
think we
that's the
all
fast way of
hear,
saying it.
right. We always hear consistency, I think, and people are like, okay, yeah, sure. Like I'll try to post 3 times a week and be consistent about it. But I think what a lot of people lack is that intentionality. And that's the thing that we have to come back to time and time again, right? Because it's not posting just to post. Like, why are we posting? What do we want them to do? Where do we want them to go? What do we want them to learn? And I think consistency can be easy if you're posting just to post. Intentionality is the hard part, right? Because you have to make sure that you're posting with intention and that it is driving your audience to do something or go somewhere versus just like, here's a random post that has nothing to do with what we offer or who we are or what we do. So I love that because, again, like you said, everybody hears consistency. We always hear the C word, but intentionality is just as important, if not more important, than consistently posting. So let's talk about your niche. Your brand is kind of built around a pretty specific niche. It's the realistic, non-judgy minimalism. How did you find that niche, and how did you commit to positioning that niche and talking to them? And do you ever worry sometimes that it's too narrow, or is it actually such a big niche that you don't have to really worry about it?
I narrowed in on that realistic, non-judgy decluttering based on feedback from my
That's
first,
awesome.
like 6 months of posting. Everyone was like, gosh, it's just, it's so non-judgy, or you're so realistic. And I'm like, well, there you go. That's what I am.
That's what I'm going for.
Yeah, exactly. And I also chose that because I do feel like it is broad, while it's a niche, it's also like, there are not as many people who want to be staunch minimalists out there.
Right.
But I think many people would realistically like their house to be a less of a pain in the hiney,
Mhm.
right? And nobody wants to feel judged. So, it is broad, but it is also, it's narrow enough that people know what they're getting, what they're coming here for, because in many ways, people do feel judged by decluttering accounts, especially the
Right.
ones that are they're very aspirational, and sometimes those are fun to follow, because you look at that person's beautifully stark home and you're like, that does seem nice, but then you look around your house and you're like, well, my kid's obsessed with stuffies, what's a girl to do,
Right.
and so that's where I
Exactly.
come in. That's where I come in. So yeah, I think getting feedback from your audience and hopefully creating something enough that they want to give you feedback and they say, thank you for making this so realistic, thank you for making this so non-judgy, and then that can just kind of happen naturally. You find that niche, and I don't worry about it being too small,
Mhm.
because I've never met a woman, and I primarily talk to women,
Yes.
but I have never met a woman who doesn't want to declutter her house.
Right.
There's of course always these naysayers online. I love my stuff or this or that. But even my friends in person that are like, I love my stuff, it still is followed with, but I'm so overwhelmed, right?
Exactly. And that's the point.
So and that's the point.
Mhm.
Yeah. So no, I do feel grateful that decluttering is definitely a niche, but it's a pretty broad one because most people struggle with it.
Right, right. And I love that you have that like non-judgmental approach. You're like, hey, I get it. Like we all kind of live these lives where everybody's busy and just all of a sudden you've collected all of this stuff, or like you have sentimental stuff and it's like it's stressful. How do I live with this, or how do I donate it, or what do I do with this? And I think again that authenticity and being non-judgy is what you said, like your audience appreciates that. That feedback that you got from them, was that organic, or it was organic feedback? That's great. We've always talked to our audience, if you're not getting organic feedback from your clients, then do surveys, or from your audience, do surveys and get that feedback, because that's going to help you to grow your brand as well, even more.
Yeah, it
Um,
was I was just saying, yeah, it was mostly Instagram comments or podcast reviews was where I got that from. And I also wanted to say really fast too that, when we go into the depth of what's behind what we're sharing, for decluttering, it is broad in the sense that it is intersected with everything in life. And so
mhm.
I talk about why women tend to be the ones that are more that want to declutter. It's not just because we care more about our houses. It goes so deep into cultural, expectations and gender roles and all of that. Everything is very intersected. So I would say that with anybody, whatever your niche is, if you're passionate about it, you can also expand a little bit into all the whys and the depth behind it, and that can give you plenty of room for content that doesn't feel repetitive.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I think, my husband, love him dearly, but I'm always the one that's just like, okay, we got to donate this. We got to get rid of this. I'm ready to burn everything in my basement. I've asked him multiple times. I'm like, can we have just like a contained fire down here and just burn it all? Just get rid of it. But yeah, it's different. So a couple more questions here really quick. You've said you lead with generosity and you don't gatekeep. A lot of brand builders are afraid to give away too much. We've also been afraid of that in the past, building our own brand. What would you say to somebody who is afraid of giving away too much and like not getting enough back in their business or what they do?
Well, I mean, me hiring you guys is a perfect example of why I don't think you can ever give away too much, frankly. Because if you hadn't given away such amazing free information, I wouldn't have trusted you.
Yep.
You have to give that away for free. Gatekeeping it is only going to hurt you in the long run. So you have to go in with this generous spirit of like, I'm going to share everything I know for free. And the reason that I don't think that backfires in your business is not only will it make people trust you, but at the end of the day, people aren't necessarily coming to or like hiring you for brand new information. Sometimes they are. Like for me, I don't know anything about SEO. It is helpful that you guys know that, and I don't. But a lot of times people are hiring you because they know the answer, but they just can't do it, or they want all the answers in one place. Right. So that is very different. You can share on a reel all the time, every day, all of the information that you're also giving to your private clients. But your private clients get it all in one place. It's more organized. It's specific to them. There's so much that people benefit from when they actually buy from you that is very different than the free information that they might already know or get online or through your freebies or whatever it is. So yeah, I don't think you can give away too much. I think that it actually draws more people to you. I look at your guys' success. I think about Shannon McKinstry. She is a social media expert, and she always says, she's like, I have shared everything I know on the internet, everything. And she has a $2 million business. They will not trust you if you gatekeep. They need to see that you're willing to give, that you care enough to give that information for free. And then they're like, for me, example, right? Like, great example. You guys just redid all my freebies for me, rebranded them. They're gorgeous now because you guys know better than anyone. I am the worst at graphic design. And I could have technically done that myself, right?
Yeah.
I know how to use Canva or whatever. I don't have a good design eye, but like I could technically do them. I came to you guys because I already know what you're capable of doing for free. And so then I was like, well, I'm going to pay them because I don't have the time. I just don't have the time to do this, you know? And I also don't have the talent, but like, I don't have the time. And so, yeah, there's a lot of reasons people hire you. It's not just because they want brand new information. They don't have time. They want all the information in one place, a mixture of different reasons.
I love that. Yeah. Strategy, not enough time, not the expert. Someone else can do it better. All of those things. I love that. Okay. So I've got two more questions and I want them to be like, this is going to be a hard ask of you. Sorry. Like a 1-sentence answer.
Okay.
So what is the hardest, maybe most unglamorous part of building a personal brand? That's the first one.
Oh my gosh. The hardest part about building a personal brand is knowing exactly what you want to say and why.
Love that. And what is the most exciting and rewarding part of building a personal brand?
The most rewarding part is the people that you get to connect with and form relationships with, because this is a slightly longer answer. I just don't think that it's not true that you don't connect with people in your community, that, there's some people that would say that those connections aren't real. And I disagree with that. And so it's just fun, the people you meet along the way.
Yeah. And I think just like you can make such personal connections with internet friends. Like we've never met each other in person. I would love to give you a hug if I was close enough, but we are very far from each other. Yes. And I think community and connection is so important when it comes to building personal brands, having small businesses, showing up online. It's way stronger than we give it credit for. So I love that. Well, okay. I absolutely adore you. Everybody else, if you're looking to declutter or you just want to follow an amazing lady, Shannon is your go-to gal. But I want you to tell us where our audience can find you and if you have anything fun coming up that you'd like to share with them.
Sure. You can find me if you're a podcast listener, which you are because you're listening to this, anywhere you get podcasts, the Paring Down podcast. I always remind everyone there's no I in pair. It's Paring, Paring Down podcast. You can find me online on social media at Shannon Leyko, Leyko. And I would love if you wanted to join my weekly newsletter that helps you stay focused on decluttering, because we get a lot of media and a lot of social media that gives us all the reasons to consume more and get more. So I do think we need to consume the media that helps us remember not to do that, And so a weekly short little pretty email that Courtney and her team designed will come into your email every Wednesday. So you can go to shannonleyko.com/decluttering-newsletter, or just click newsletter at the top of my website, sign up for the Less Express and get that on Wednesdays. And that'll tell you also about my new book coming out next year with Penguin Random House. It's so crazy. Yes. April 2027. Don't Save the Good Stuff. So you'll learn about that in the newsletter as well.
Oh, I love it. And all of these will be in our show notes, so you guys can go to those and click on them and go out too. I will say I am not an inbox girly. I don't read a whole lot of newsletters, and Shannon is the one newsletter that I read every single week, because even before we redesigned it, because I was just like, I'm learning so much and I can do this step by step, and I love your storytelling. So even if you're not a newsletter gal like myself or an inbox person, Shannon's is worth it. It is amazing. So thank you so much, Shannon, for coming on the podcast, and we just appreciate everything you do.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.
It's time for a refill. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Duo on Air.
If you loved hanging out with us today, here are 3 quick ways to support the show. 1, subscribe so you never miss a new episode.
2, share this episode with a biz bestie and tag us on Instagram at duo.collective.
And 3, leave a review because we love hearing from you.
Finally, keep sharing your episode ideas. We love creating content for you. Head over to duocollective.com to catch up on all the latest episodes, brand and website makeovers, SEO tips, and so much more.
See you there. Let's duo this thing called business together.